All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Punk Rock Radar. Today, we're doing the Suicide Machines tier list. And if it's your first tier list with us, what we're going to do is talk about each album in chronological order, rank them S through D. And because there's only 7 albums here, we're going to have a maximum of 2 per tier and a minimum of 1 per tier. And S can only have 1. And we just finished up a pretty heated discussion here. Lewis and I learned that Matt is not a very big Suicide Machines fan, which was news to us. We don't talk about these rankings at all beforehand. So this is going to be an interesting list. You have Lewis and I heard. I'm a huge fan of this band. I love all these records. It was really hard for me to pick out a D. It sounds like Matt's entire list might be in D, but Matt, why don't you explain yourself a little bit before we get into it?
It's not like I don't dislike the Suicide Machines. Like, there's probably 3 albums that I consider, good albums, great albums. But I just feel like the band maybe get too much hype. They get too much hype or they get blown up to be better than they actually are. So I think there's better ska bands than them in that third wave. And that's just my opinion.
Lewis, how are you feeling? Because we both kind of had this revelation about Matt's disgust for the Suicide Machines. How are you feeling?
I'm surprised as well. I love the Suicide Machines. I never thought of them as like the biggest band ever or a band that gets hyped up by everybody. So it is a hot take for me to hear how much animosity Matt has for them. But I think we're going to have very different tier lists probably.
Which is good. And I was going to, my intro I was going to say they are, in my opinion, probably the best ska-core band of all time.
That's going to be my opinion too.
Okay, but Matt strongly disagrees. He was saying Mustard Plug is better. He was saying that MU 330 is better.
Oh, I never said MU 330.
Catch 22 was the number one.
Catch 22. My opinion, Catch 22 is one of the best bands that come out of third wave ska. And then you have Against All Authority. I would say Against All Authority is a better band than the Suicide Machines.
Yeah,
I think that's a stretch.
No. I strongly disagree. I like both bands, but
so another thing, like for them, is just like I don't hear a lot of trumpets on their songs. I don't hear a lot of horns.
I mean, they don't call themselves a ska band.
They're considered they're in the third wave of ska though.
It's like ska punk, the same way Operation Ivy was. It's kind of like along those lines.
That was going to be my point. So we should just jump into the list and see what happens, I think, probably. Because we could argue all day.
I mean, I remember I listened to Link 80's one album over any of these.
Well, that's a great Ska-core album, too. So
yeah, but let's just get right into it, because we could bicker all day. But let's get right into it. Lewis, I'm going to let you start us off here with Destruction by Definition. Where are you putting this one? Can't wait to see your face.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, not interesting, I guess, but somewhat serendipitous that you mentioned Op Ivy, because this is going to be my S tier Suicide Machines record. I know they have a lot of good records, and I face the same issue as you of trying to pick ones and put ones in D. Destruction by Definition, I think, is one of their most complete records, and it feels like a suitable follow-up to like that Op Ivy sound coming out in the late 80s, early 90s there. And a definitive Ska-core album, especially indicative of like the mid 90s. This album's super complete. I don't think it has a lot of fluff on it. I think there's obviously a couple silly songs, but you could obviously tell they're tongue in cheek. Like the Van song, I don't think is meant to be taken as a serious, song. But I think compared to a lot of the other records, it's really tight. And I think it's one of like the best mainstream punk releases that came out for sure, and as like a major debut from a band. So I'm a huge fan of this album. I'm putting it in as S.
All right, Matt, let me hear it.
Yeah, I think it was a great first album for them, a good, kind of jump start they had there on the ska scene for this one. And I don't think it's an S tier, but I do have it as an A tier. I do have this as an A. It's a great, first album put out by them, so this is going in A for me.
All right, so I didn't see this coming. I'm going the lowest of the three of us. I'm going B with Destruction by Definition. And it's not because I don't like this album. I don't want to take anything away from it. It's one of my favorite debut albums of all time. I know I said that about Don't Turn Away, but this beats the shit out of Don't Turn Away. It's not even close. I just think there's 3, maybe even 4 records I like better than this one. So for that reason, I'm going to go B on Destruction by Definition, but could easily be S or A on any given day. But Lewis, I'm going to let you go right into the next one because I'm curious what you think about Battle Hymns.
Yeah, so I really like Battle Hymns. So part of the reason I put Destruction by Definition as S is because if somebody said, what album should I start with the Suicide Machines, I wouldn't pick Destruction because it's the first one. It would be because I think it kind of shows the whole groundwork of what the band would become and kind of like those early stylings and their changes coming. I think Battle Hymns kind of continues that evolution and like them kind of diversifying the sound a little bit. I think it's a great album. Someone is a killer opener. I think they have a lot of great songs in this album, but there is a lot of fluff on this album. I think you can cut away probably 6 or 7 songs and the album quality would remain unchanged is my personal take on it. But having said that, the quality of the good songs on this, I'm going to still put this one in as A. It was a definitive one that I listened to all the time when I first got it.
All right, Matt, I'm interested to hear you too. What about you?
Yeah, I have a different look on this album. I'm putting this one actually in C, John. This is a C album to me. Battle Hymns feels like it was a Rush album, and like I feel like in the studio they found out what Control V and Control C does, copy and paste. And I feel like this album is just 5 songs copied and pasted over and over and over and over and over again.
See, I don't fully disagree with Matt on this one. And I'm actually going to hit the next 2 back to back because I feel like I'm going to need to explain myself. There's going to be some pitchforks flying on my take about Battle Hymns. I'm kind of with Matt. Like, I feel like there's 12 songs on here that are decent, but they all kind of sound the same. You've got 2 songs that are 5 seconds or less, which, if there's 22 songs, do we really need those 5-second songs? And then you've got at least 8 songs that I would consider filler. Like that's almost a whole album of filler. So this album honestly is the one I've listened to least in my 20 plus years as a Suicide Machines fan. And listening back the last 3 or 4 weeks, like my opinion didn't really change at all. So I'm putting this one in D. This is my least favorite Suicide Machines record. And I know like some of you are going to be like, how could you put this next one, the self-titled, above it? So let me kind of explain just a little bit. I think there's 3 great pop punk songs on this album that Sometimes I Don't Mind, Permanent Holiday, and Green. And I think those 3 would be a contender for best song on Battle Hymns. So, Someone's great, of course, but the rest of this album, I think, without a doubt, are some of their worst songs also. So I really struggle with that. But in the end, I'm more likely to come back to those 3 songs than any song on Battle Hymns. So this is going to be my C. Battle Hymns is my D. Matt, I'll let you get your jabs in on this one. Go for it.
Yeah, so the Suicide Machines self-titled, I actually have this one in D. To me, this is not really the Suicide Machines. I don't know what happened here, when they made this album. I don't know if they were trying to change their style up or were they signed to a different label at this time, or was this like a different label record?
No, it's all Hollywood records.
Yeah, so I don't know what they were going for. Hey, they tried something different. Maybe they realized it's not going to work. This kind of slower or more poppier kind of take, and that's why I'm putting this one in D.
It's fair. Lewis, what about you?
I think I'm going to put this one in C. I think I do like this album probably better than both you guys, and I've picked this one before, I think, on one of our other ranking lists. I agree. I mean, obviously, it's a big divergence from their sound, and obviously, I think they're paying homage to that with the album cover, obviously, right? That this is like a different style of album. So yeah, they're trying something different, but honestly, I kind of like their mid-tempo rock songs. Like, I don't think they're that bad. And going back to your point, John, I like their pop punk singles are fantastic on this album. So I put this in as a C just because I like the other parts of the catalog, but once again, it's an album I still enjoy and go back to regardless. So
that's cool, man. I thought this would be both of your guys' D. That's why I took the plunge and put this in C and Battle Hymns in D. But that's good. Yeah, there's some underappreciated songs on here. But Lewis, I'm assuming the next one is gonna possibly be your D tier record. Do you want to take us into Steal This Record?
You change your song, but you can't take back the things you said. Can't take back the things you said.
Well, John, maybe you should go play the lottery today, because you are right. Steal This Record is going to be my D tier. I don't even particularly hate this record. I think it has some strong songs on it. However, I think you really like The Killing Blow, and I think that's a pretty weak opening song. So out of just necessity, this is going to have to go into my D tier. Once again, I kind of like the mid-tempo rock songs that they do on this album as well, kind of a continuation of what they were doing in the self-titled. But this is definitely the album that I go back to the least compared to like all the other ones in their discography. So this is going to be a D for me.
All right, Matt, what about you?
Yeah, this one is actually a B for me. I think it's better than Battle Hymns and Self-Titled. I mean, just the first 3 songs are better than any song on those other 2 albums. So I'm putting this one in B. It does feel a little flat to me. That's why it's not going higher than a B. There's some flat songs on here. But to me, I feel like this is a solid B. This is a good follow-up album to the self-titled. So it kind of redeemed them a little bit, a little redemption there for them. But yeah, this is a B for me.
All right, I'm with Matt. I'm going B here also. I think this is probably their most underrated album, and I think a lot of people do lump this in with the self-titled. But like, I personally think it sounds more like the next one than the last one. And guys, little story time. I want to see if you guys remember this, but we had a friend back in the day, Kent, who was quite the prolific thief. Back in the day at like Best Buy in Record Town, he used to go into the bathroom, unwrap the CD and put the disc in his underwear and then give it to us, which, as I think about it now, I was like, that was really gross. But anyway, Kent had tried to actually steal this record like he stole everything else. And he got busted. It was this one, and I think it was Heavy Petting Zoo as well, ironically, where it ended up. But I'm curious to see how the album name would hold up in court. I mean, obviously, it never got that far. But after his failed attempt to steal this record, I bought Steal This Record, and I'm okay with it. Like Lewis said, I think The Killing Blow is a good song, and I think the band thinks so too, because they rewrote it on the last song on the next album too. It's pretty much the exact same song. The only thing that bugs me on this is Steal This Record, the title track has like a minute-long outro, which on the second song on the album it's very odd. And then to have a cover song as your track 4, like it's a great cover, but I like covers if they're gonna be on the record, put them towards the end. But like I said, my most underrated Suicide Machine record, I really like Stand Up, Bleeding Heart, Leap of Faith.
Yeah.
I really tried to give this one a new reappraise. Like, I pushed myself to listen to it again, and I just really didn't change too much for me. But I don't disagree. I think it's pretty good. Like I said, I like all of these albums. Mm-hmm. So just in the scope of everything, it's a D for me. So
yeah, see, this is another one I thought I'm really surprised by Matt's B. Like I was trying to be a little more generous because I thought it would be like in both your B and C. So I completely understand what you're saying here. But Matt, I'm going to let you take us into the next one, a Match and Some Gasoline. What are you doing with this one?
Yeah, Match and Some Gasoline is going to be in my A tier. I feel that they finally got back on track, right? After those last 2 albums. And this is a great album, I feel like. So I'm putting this one in A for me, a Match and Some Gasoline.
All right, Lewis, what about you?
It's going to be a B for me. I love this album. I love the change in tone, the more hardcore sound they went for. It's pretty much balls to the wall the whole time. And I think I loved this album a lot more when it first came out. Over time, though, with everything in scope, putting all the discography into perspective, this one's seems like a solid B for me, just for it doesn't feel as diverse as some of the other albums. It's still an album that I love to listen to, and I remember I had the poster on my wall, but it's definitely a solid B. And we still have a lot of good, solid, straight up ska songs on here too. So it's a B. It's a good album.
All right, so this is my S tier album, and I switched it last night, like almost all day yesterday. I was listening to these albums, which is very odd. Like normally when we pick out these lists like 3-4 weeks in advance, by the time recording rolls around, I'm burnt out. Like albums I love, I hate. Albums I hate even more. But this was my big riser. I don't think there's a single bad song on this one. I think the same could be said for the next two as well. But other than the rewrite of Killing Blow and Politics of Humanity, and the dreaded hidden acoustic track, which I always hate when bands do that. Those are my only problems with this album. This is my favorite as of right now. Yesterday it wasn't, but I'm putting A Match and Some Gasoline as my S tier, as my alone S tier record. But Lewis, I'll let you take us into the next one here, which in my opinion sounds pretty similar. It was the one I swapped out last minute. What are you doing with War Profiteering Is Killing Us All?
You might think that nobody knew. It's become everything, you can't stop it. It's become everything, you can't stop it.
Oh, going with that copy and paste theme that Matt talked about earlier with Battle Hymns, I mean, this is the copy and paste album. So this sounds pretty much identical to Match and Some Gasoline in my perspective. I think this is a great record, don't get me wrong. I really liked it when it came out. I think the title track really blows you away to start. And then, it even has like really strong songs like Junk is like one of my favorite straight up more ska songs they have. But for me, it'd be pretty hard for me to separate this out from the other one. So this one's going to be my other B tier, just kind of sticking it next to it. It's a really similar album, an incredible album that I can listen to almost every song on. But for me, it's just kind of in that B category.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, man, I'm putting this one in S. This is their best album, I'm going to say. This is the best album. It's the hardest album. This album goes balls to the wall. It's hard. And that's what I like with my music. So this one is my S. This album rips. I was listening to this and I was like, this album is a great album to start a pit to, this is the album. I feel like their best one. I feel like it was well produced. Everything sounds good. I think this is their best one to me. Quality and everything, songs and quality.
See, I agree with both of you, with what both of you are saying. I think they're very similar, which is why I switched them last minute. Like even the first song, like you could swap the first song on both of these albums. You probably wouldn't even notice the difference. But yeah, like Lewis said, Junk is probably my favorite song on here. There's very few songs I skip. It could be my favorite Suicide Machines album on any given day. So I'm going slightly below. I think they're pretty damn close, but
the production quality on this one's better than Match, I would say, though. Yeah, this one sounds way better sonically. I would think, at least. That's the one thing I'll definitely give it over Match.
I agree.
Do you believe in those wishing wells?
Yeah.
But Matt, I'm gonna let you wrap us up here with the final album that came out in 2020. I'm definitely curious based on our very short conversation earlier.
So I'm putting this one in B. I don't feel like this is a great album. I feel like this was kind of a dud to follow up to War Profiteering. Kind of puts me to sleep a little bit, but it's definitely better than Battle Hymns and self-titled. So that's why I have to put it into B. Can't put it into C or D because this is definitely better than Battle Hymns and self-titled. But I felt like it was kind of like disappointing to me when it came out. I was like, okay, I'll see a follow-up to War Profiteering, big 15-year gap there, right? But I thought they could have followed up a little stronger to their last one.
All right. Yeah, I don't completely disagree, but Lewis, what are you doing with it?
I disagree a bit. I think this is my other A. And I mean, honestly, this could have been my S tier. I think this is a really strong album that kind of hits all different genres that they've dabbled with, and for me, it kind of gives almost a definitive like late stage Suicide Machines experience. Like you kind of get some of that mid-tempo stuff. You get some of the straight up ska. You got some of the hard stuff in here. I think it has some of their best singles on it, if we want to call them singles, like Well Whiskey Wishes is an incredible song. Trapped in a Bomb. I mean, what's that? Simple's pretty good. I mean, it's a little too poppy and hopeful, but it's a good song. I'm not a big fan of the opener. I think Bully and Blue is actually one of the weaker songs to start the album. I think they could have started with something else, but this could have easily been my S if not for Destruction by definition. So I'm going to give this one an A, and it was a much needed surprise during COVID that this came out. So it was something to listen to. So I really like this album a lot.
Yeah, I'm also putting it in A, and I agree with everything you said. It's especially, I think, Well, Whiskey Wishes is the catchiest song they ever wrote. I think the album really picks up around track 5. Like To Play Caesar is great. Eternal Contrarian is great. Impossible Possibilities is another great song. Like, to me, and this is where Matt strongly disagrees, I think this kind of like solidifies them as like a band that like can't be touched in this genre. Like, if we're talking bands still active nowadays, I think the only band that really sniffed what they could do is the Flatliners. And look what happened to the Flatliners. Like, you could hear Flatliners in Starbucks now. It's really, really sad.
Who did they sign to? Fat Wreck? That's why.
Yeah, they became a Fat Wreck band, basically. Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened to them.
Well, I mean, they got bad after Fat Wreck. They signed for the Chasing Light, See the Light, whatever it was not on Fat. That's when it really got bad. I forget who it is. Maybe Rise, one of those other shit labels. But so that's,
don't tag them in this post.
But this is our list, guys. How do you feel about how it came out, Matt?
Feels good. And just to mention the split that also came out, that would have been in my D. And you all know what I do with splits. I compare it to probably like Common Rider Against All Authority, and then Bouncing Souls Anti-Flag. So those are my 2 S splits that have ever been made. And that's what I use to gauge it. And this split doesn't hold anything to those other 2. So that's why it's in D.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that too. I think there's some good potential songs on that split, but like, yeah, I mean, it's 4 songs, and none of them are as good as like any of the good songs on the Revolution Spring. So yeah, if we had that in that one, it probably would have taken the D and kicksteel this record up into the C tier for me for sure. I would think for now, just because I haven't spent enough time with it.
Yeah, I didn't listen to that one a ton yet, but from the I feel like the other band songs were better than the Suicide Machine songs, which I did not expect. But that would be a D for me as well, right next to Battle Hymns. So we were gonna include it. I think, I don't know if you guys both thought it was gonna be here, but yeah, I needed more time with that one because I really enjoyed listening to this catalog and re-listening to Destruction by Definition and Self-Titled, which it's been a while. But that's it. That's going to wrap up our tier list here. We've got a couple videos coming up, going to be themed more towards Halloween. We've got bands we want to bring back from the dead. We've got horror, punk, albums or bands. I forget what we decided. And then we're going to do a Misfits tier list. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you're subscribed so you get the notification when it comes out. Lewis, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Oh, love this band. This was one of the most fun ones to work through and re-listen to the catalog. You know, I was in the same category of Face to Face where I had to catch up on a bunch of records because I didn't realize they had come out. You know, so it's this was an album band I stayed current on. So I guess that speaks to how much I think of them, because I think I picked up this album day one when it came out. So love the Suicide Machines. Love to see another full length and them to keep being relevant. Hopefully.
Matt, any last words?
I wouldn't want to see another Suicide Machine album. I think they're done. They should just end it here. You know, that's it. They had a good run. But yeah, I would see them in tour probably again. I would go to one of their concerts as long as they have some good other acts with them. But yeah, that's it.
All right, guys. So that's going to wrap up for us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.